Hey everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, we actually have split things up a bit on YouTube. On our podcast, it's going to be one really long episode, but here we're going to jump right into episode 2. So Cameron, take it away.
All right. Welcome back. And I think we should go right now and start talking about the second episode, which is entitled The High Aldwin. Great
title. Of course, The High Aldwin harkens back to Billy Barty in the original movie.
Yeah. Of course, sadly, couldn't be back for this, but I really love, as we open here on a flashback, there's a couple things that sort of immediately call it out as a flashback. We're seeing Willow come back to Tir Asleen after an undeterminate amount of time after the end of the movie. And they do a great job on making Sorsha look much younger, like she looks in the movie. So you have a real sense of, this is very briefly after this. I do want to call special attention to Willow's incredible costume, which appears to be like a denim jacket and a knit cap beanie and a braided goatee, alongside Eric's 70s print shirt. I think it's one of the most sort of interesting fantasy outfits I've seen in a while, because it feels so much like it came from the side of a airbrushed van. But yeah, we get this scene where Willow has come back after his vision to tell Sorsha that he thinks it's time for them to start training Elora Danan, and Sorsha totally disagrees.
Oh, can I just say too? He's got the facial hair and everything. He's kind of gone from the Padawan in the movie to now he's like Jedi Knight. Maybe exactly. Still not Jedi Master, but he's got the Obi-Wan kind of progression going on. Anyway, I just kind of noticed that as well. But yeah, go ahead.
So Sorsha, he says he wants to start training Elora Danan, and he says, well, I'm a sorcerer. And Sorsha, we see yet again cutting someone to the quick, and maybe not with all fairness involved, where she says, you're not a great sorcerer, and you never will be. And you can see how much he sort of wilts when she says that, and he doesn't have anything else to say, and just sort of walks out. And it's a sad moment of him being totally rejected by her.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, did he mess up in some way in the past 4 years, whatever it's been? I think Elora probably looks like she's around 4 or 5 in when we see her later on. Did he mess up, or was Sorsha just being mean, or what caused her to say that? It's a very biting thing to say. Even if you are being honest as a friend,
Right. And again, I'm not sure that is truly an honest appraisal of Willow's capabilities, but she certainly thinks that it is. We also learn in that sequence that already this early on, Mad Mardigan is gone. And we learn much more specifically why he's gone, because he's in search of a legendary cuirass, which I'm going to pronounce 10 different ways as we do this podcast, but it means a piece of armor, a chest plate. And so Mad Mardigan must have left, when his twins were extremely young, because he's gone already by this point.
Yes, the Chimerian cuirass. And I can't help but think that Chimerian is a play off of the word chimeran, meaning magical or mystical, or chimera,
the mythological,
spelled differently. It's a CH in earthly usage, but it's a KY in this particular world.
We also learn without much fanfare in that sequence that Shalindria and Rizal are completely gone by this point.
Yeah, and
the barrier is...
What do you think gone means? It doesn't. Does it mean dead, or does it mean something else happened to them?
I would have to go back and listen to the exact phrasing. I think she might just say gone, and I hope to assume that we'll learn more about that later. But they're out of the picture after the formation of the barrier.
Yeah. I believe gone is the word, or they did not say dead. That I did pick up on. So we could see them in some way or another. It could be they've become one with the barrier or something like that, I have a prediction about that, and I just realized.
So when we cut back to the present day in the story, we cut back to our fellowship entering the Nelwyn village, which is now, as you mentioned, housed underground in their mines. And you can see that the ways they've adapted to living underground, they have all these great sort of like fungus lights that are glowing and these sort of interesting catch basins and water collection systems in the background. It's a really cool designed set that they get to inhabit.
Yeah, you can tell they've been there a while. There are fewer of them, so are we to take that to mean that a lot of them have died, or are we to take that or left, or perhaps they just didn't have the money to hire as many people to fill the
there
space?
Are still quite a few Nelwyns in that sequence, but yeah, and I think he actually explicitly says that we've suffered some very hard times lately, and then it's sort of left to the imagination. But yeah, they are certainly a lessened population.
Yeah, one thing that really kind of stood out to me in terms of something that they've got to define at some point, and they did not here, is of course we meet the daughter, played by his actual daughter in real life. But we do not meet the son, and we don't really get a sense of what happened to him. There's a part where they mention him, but Willow's reaction isn't like sad or anything. It's like,
no, but it's clearly a reaction of some point, and he's not there.
Yeah, and of course Kaya, the wife, like there's no mention of her. And in fact, the scene that happens a little bit later on where his daughter is wishing him well on the way. It reminded me a lot of Kaya wishing
very
him
much
well
so, yeah.
on the way.
And I just wanted to stop and point out, you did mention that's Warwick's real life daughter, and she's just fantastic.
Oh yeah, she's
in
great.
That scene. I went to go look her up to see who is this, because the performance was fantastic, and that's when I realized who it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great that he's able to involve his own family in such ways.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are others. I know he has a wife and son as well.
His son, I believe, is his stand-in and double for a lot of scenes.
Oh, really? That's cool.
On set. Yeah.
That's cool.
So then we have the introduction of Willow again, now as the High Aldwin, the sort of like leader of the Nelwyn people. And he's a very different High Aldwin than Billy Barty was. And at this point, it seems very clear to me that you can see Ricky Gervais' influence on Warwick Davis and his style of humor. I have been a big fan of Gervais, and I tend to find that it is less and less empathetic as I go on, and that's my sort of continuing problem with that style of humor. But what I really noticed here is that as Willow as Warwick Davis as Willow is doing this very sort of dry Ricky Gervais style humor where he's a little bit arrogant and a little bit off-putting, it still has a real core of empathy, both for the audience as Willow, and knowing who that character is. He's the butt of some of these sort of self-effacing jokes, but he's not a buffoon.
Yeah, there is that difference that you mentioned, but there's also, I think, a lot similar, more so than I may have expected, in like the way that we saw Billy Barty as High Aldwin be presented. He comes in being carried and he there's a ceremony to it, right?
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, felt a little out of place for Willow, but, considering the situation, I guess I can forgive it or whatever. But it just, it kind of took me by surprise that he would be that way about it.
Well, I almost got the sense that maybe they don't do that normally, and maybe he's sort of showing off because he's feeling insecure about it, because the people who are carrying him are kind of like, get him off as soon as possible, and he's a little frustrated by it. So I get the sense that may be sort of the consequence of him trying to put on too much of a show.
Yeah. I think it's funny. We know he has an apprentice because the apprentice asks him a question he doesn't want to be asked.
Yeah, who I was really expecting to have my back. Yeah, that's a really terrific line.
Right. Yeah, and the whole scene very closely echoed a lot of things from High Aldwin. Of course, you had the bones and the choosing the
finger test.
finger.
Which I sort of assumed that she would answer correctly. And even as he's being like, "You pick yours, pick yours," she's just not picking up on it. Which sort of sets up a theme that they go for through this whole episode, that magic doesn't come naturally to her, the way that sort of Willow and a narrative might expect.
Yeah, a couple of things though about the bones and that bit with Laura and the fingers. He never says the bones tell me nothing or anything like that. Maybe they told him something. You never know.
Yeah, he sort of launches straight into that very Billy Barty-esque monologue at that point, which he then tries to put like stand-up jokes in that fall flat. And you know what? If you just keep cutting back to Borman looking in the audience, throwing expressions.
Yeah, those expressions
I'll watch
wonderful.
it all day long.
Yeah. But then I'm not really clear on how it seemed like everyone in the audience knew that she picked the wrong finger.
Yeah.
How did they know?
It seems like maybe only like one person in the entire Nelwyn village doesn't know the secret to the finger test, and it's like a thing that they trick kids with, like a snipe hunt. But yeah, they all seem clearly to know. But that's not how it was in the movie. It was like, by the time it got to Willow, like 2 fingers were down, so he had a pretty good shot if it were actually one of those fingers, right? I think you may have discovered a plot hole. So after that ceremony, we go to a lovely sort of Nelwyn feast. And Kit at that point is sort of frustrated because she really wants to keep moving on and find Eric. Mm-hmm. And she's very disappointed in this turn of events that puts Elora Danon at the center, as well as pausing and waiting before they go off on their expedition. And she has a line where she says, "They seem, this seems nice, but I'm not here to learn about Nelwyn culture." Right. And I was like, but I am. I'm here to learn about Nelwyn culture. But it makes sense for her character that she wants to get out of there. And it's a feeling that's shared by Elora Danon, who also doesn't want to stay and be taught magic. And it was sort of striking to me how fast you get these 2 sequences where Willow is rejected, first by Sorsha and then by Elora, in sort of painful ways, where they just sort of dismiss him and what his thoughts for the right thing to do are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder too, like magic wise, like really, what has he done anything since the movie? Like we don't really know. He's done enough to be appointed the sorcerer on this journey, right?
Yeah, Sorsha has enough belief that he will do right by them there. But yeah, as far as we know, the last thing magic he did was turning a rock into a bird at the very end of the movie.
Yeah, like did he go on any adventures, or did he just get to the village and then, the High Aldwin passed away and he became the High Aldwin? It seems like like he'd be bigger than that. Just going off of how the movie ends.
When we come back to the second flashback later, I feel like there's an implication that he goes back straight to the village at that point and never leaves. But we'll get to that in a second. I did want to point out that when they're at the dinner, there is a massive lore dump where Silas and Borman start talking about geography for a few seconds.
Yes.
And it's just a huge list of places: the Nockmar Badlands, the Alkalines, the Dragonspine. Oddly enough, in there, they mention 2 towns. They mention Mannheim and Cameron. Cameron spelled Camryn, which was notable because Cameron Mannheim is the name of an actress. So I'm wondering if mentioning Mannheim and Cameron was an homage to her, but it seemed strange.
Yeah, maybe the writer's just a friend of hers or something, or really likes her work.
Hey, if you want to name something Cameron in the Willow world, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
You're personally invested in that particular place.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just like culturally, one thing that I picked up on with the daughter was she calls him Da now. And if you remember from the original movie, she called him Dada. So I thought that was an interesting kind of, it's like a parallel to how a human kid would say Dada and then Dad later on.
Actually, I think that might be Da for dad is a common thing that Welsh kids call their parents.
Okay.
Yeah, Da is a Welsh thing. So, and the fact that a lot of this is filmed in Wales.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That might be an intentional thing that they did.
Okay. Well, that makes sense too. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It was a variation of what a kid would say in the movie, and it's a variation of what at least an American dad is.
And then, as Willow's feeling down, we have another lovely scene with his daughter, who, sort of kicks him in the rear and tells him what he knows he needs to do. And she's the one that pulls Shalindria's wand down off the shelf, which it has seemingly been in there the entire time. Like it seems to have been closed up in the prologue and never opened again since.
Right. And recall, like in the prologue, we see that in conjunction with the description of Laura Dannon being having her memory wiped, basically, and
or being hidden. Yeah,
being hidden. Yeah, right.
So then we have our second flashback, which is really a continuation of the very first flashback we saw, which is Jean Jacket and cool goatee Willow speaking to a very young Laura Dannon. Who seems to sort of barely remember him at this point, or if she remembers him at all. And they have this sort of brief conversation, and then very quickly it shows her running away.
Yeah.
And I think what is sort of said behind underneath the dialogue is someone says he tried to take her. And there's this moment where, like, Willow Sorsha almost is threatening to Willow, and he is so sort of hurt by her reaction. But I also don't know that it's clear that he didn't try to take her.
It was a stranger danger moment, and he was the stranger, right?
And so in that moment, he's, furious, and he says, "Fine, I don't care about either of you. Don't call for me for help again. I'm going back to my village." And I really get the sense that sort of like out of a feeling of just utter rejection, that's where he's been this entire time. And, as excited as he is to see about Laura Dannon, it's dredging up all of these old memories.
Yeah. He really thought it was important that she be trained. And so he did what he felt he had to do to make that happen. Yeah. And, it was, probably not the best choice to make, but also, like, what else could he have done?
So that leads me to wonder, because at that point, Laura Dannon is out in the open and hanging out at the castle. Is that why she was hidden more aggressively? Was she actually hidden from Willow at that point? Because Sorsha believed that he was endangering her by wanting to train her? Because we also get the hint that she outlaws all sorcery as well.
Right, but he recognized her right away just by looking at her. So I would think, he was in on that whole process.
No, I'm wondering if if Sorsha was so concerned about even Willow being a threat to her that, but it's clear that, like, this version of Willow we see he's sort of disappointed. He's not where he necessarily wanted to be. Nobody listened to him when he thought he had the right idea. And there's this sort of underlying frustration and disappointment in his performance that is really different from the Willow that we saw in the movie.
Yeah. And let's not forget the very important part of that scene, too, where we learn how her hair changed color.
Yes. Beetle blood?
Beetle blood was part of and what was honey part of it or something like that?
I was stuck on the beetle blood, to be honest.
That's... I guess, is that a forever thing, or maybe will we see her hair go back to being red? Because I think I've seen pictures of this actress with red hair. So
I also didn't need a plot reason for why a baby with red hair became blonde later.
Because that's really what threw me from outright predicting her as being who Allura was.
I've seen enough kids' hairs change color to, from black to blonde.
Yeah,
it's.
I feel like red. I feel like red is pretty consistent, though. I don't know. I guess I actually was a blonde when I was a kid. And now I'm brown haired. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, very key plot point there.
So. Yeah. After that point, Willow realizes that Allura is missing. And we also cut outside that. Then we see that Kit and Jade and potentially Borman are talking about whether they should head off on their own. And we have this sort of like fractious, everybody's sort of spreading apart. And I really loved how quickly the show said, no, we stick together. We're all going together and we're all going to find each other. Like it has a strong clarity of purpose about keeping everybody together. That I really like. And I love how Borman sort of schemes with different groups of people.
Yeah.
Like sort of, he's so good at like insinuating himself and being like, hey, you and me, we're the glue of the group. And I love watching him sort of bounce around off people like that.
Yeah. You really get the sense that he's just trying to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And
keeping himself amused.
When they catch up with Kit, he's like, just so you know, I'm with you, I'm not with them. And, he's sort of playfully playing all sides in a way that's obvious.
Is he trying to get on everyone's good side so that he can betray them or something at a later point?
You take that back about Borman. How dare you, sir? Borman is my hero. He's not betraying anybody. But then he also has that really lovely part where he comes up to Kit, when she's clearly feeling like she's not being, respected, like her wishes aren't being listened to. And he sort of drops that brief thing about, hey, not only is the Chimerian Curus real, but I went out searching it with Mad Mardigan and we found it. And see you later. And it's like so tantalizing and he just walks away. And I wonder now if that was a sort of an intentional thing to keep her with the group, because he's sort of holding off, like, I'll tell you more about, but like keep coming with us, because I really do feel like he says he's the glue of the group, and I believe it.
I believe anything Borman says until he betrays us.
Yeah. And then so as they're starting to go on their wagon train journey, and Willow of course goes with them, Willow is starting to teach, or try to teach, Alora magic, and something that also came up in the finger test scene is he starts talking to her about, like, have you ever experienced anything like this? And you sort of expect her to say, like, yeah, of course I've been feeling this all my life. But she is like resolute that she has not experienced any magical feelings whatsoever.
Yes.
And it's such a nice twist from what I sort of expected to be the chosen one. She's going to, it's fine. And I'm sure we will get to that point later, but they made her struggle here be very much a plot point that I didn't sort of expect was going to be dwelled on.
Yeah, just her whole general attitude, going into this, it's interesting because she's not like Luke Skywalker, I want to be a great sorcerer or whatever going into this. This like is totally fallen into her lap, and she's just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can with it, I guess.
She's far more interested in finding Eric and sort of pleasing Willow so that he'll come along with them. She's not interested in magic for herself.
Yeah, but her kind of progression, it's interesting to see, is like, okay, I'll give this thing a shot. Let's see. Maybe I can do this. Then she, starts getting very discouraged when she fails and fails again. Borman has a funny line of like, I think that was actually further from what it should have been.
And it's a very funny scene. Like everybody gets a couple like good jokes in there. And they're having fun with it. Like it's not a serious trauma. It's a fun part. Yeah.
Yeah. I did notice that some of those magic words were the same words that Willow was speaking when he was transforming Roselle in the tent at the end of the movie.
There's a very limited, magical grammar.
Tuatha seems to be the first thing you need to say in any incantation in this universe.
It's magical for so you have to start with it.
Before all that, actually, we had this scene with Ballantyne where we finally see what actually happened to him.
Yes, we see that the Lich is almost completely in control of him, it seems like.
Yes. And he even seems to kill one of his soldiers who came with him.
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed this, but he, in a sort of scary scene, one of the soldiers says, "Sir, are you okay?" And he turns around and he's gone full monster and he jumps on one of his men. In the very next scene where they roll up on the Nelwyn village and our heroes have already left and Willow's daughter sort of heroically tries to throw everybody off the scent, that soldier that he killed is right there behind him.
Oh, it's the same one? Really?
It's the same guy. Same guy.
I did think it was odd that there were soldiers there, because I just figured he just routed everybody because they saw what happened, but they seem cool with it.
I have two theories.
Something I have a bit of a problem with here, but yeah, maybe we'll learn more.
I have two theories. One is that they filmed that scene as a pickup to try to make him feel more frightening, and they forgot that soldier appeared later. Or perhaps he's sort of passing on the infection, and now the Lich is actually in control of all of them.
That seems, kind of like vampire, like I suck your blood, you're a vampire now kind of thing. Yeah,
that's my current apology.
Yeah.
Until they say otherwise, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
It's a fantasy world. You can do whatever you want. In my head canon, that works.
I also think it was really cool at that point that his daughter got to have that heroic beat, with all the Nelwyns with their weapons and hiding, and her deciding to come out and like try to throw him off the trail, and then she sort of like disappears when no one's looking. I didn't know we were going to come back to that character, so that was a cool beat for her to have some cool moments and sort of try to help out.
Very Batman moment there.
Yeah.
Although that wasn't exactly Commissioner Gordon she was talking to.
No, but Ralph Ineson's voice is just fantastic.
That is true.
And so we continue to have this sort of like the difficulty that she has with magic. And I love that we continue to have magic be sort of hard won and difficult, and not the easy fix. Yeah,
and I love that just how they keep trying to define magic in this universe too. Magic is the art of transforming energy from one form to another, is one thing that's said. There's earlier on, Willow has a quote from the original movie that the original High Aldwin said, where I think magic is the bloodstream of the universe. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That he uses language like there's a balance between all things. Kind of sounds like the Force. I'm just going to say
familiar language. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you'll recall in our first episode, if you happen to listen to that, but before the movie came out, I was secretly hoping this was a secret Star Wars movie as a kid.
This is Willow, a Star Wars story.
This is
keeping
hope alive.
Off the table. Yeah, it's true. That wand is a proto lightsaber.
Yes.
And we also have at this point when she's really struggling with the magic, we have that great moment where Silas comes in to see Willow, and he sort of greets him with a facial expression and not even a sentence, which gives this really cozy sense of friendship between them. It's just this very familiar thing.
Yeah, that actor's just fun to watch and listen to.
Oh, he's killing it.
I really like him.
Yeah. And Willow admits to him at that point that he's not been honest about the vision that he's had, that actually for Allura to save the world, it ends up with her dying. And it's a very simple vision that we see, but Willow has perhaps the best beard ever in this sort of future version of himself.
He totally looked like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons to me. In that,
I was nodding along because I thought you were going to say something entirely different.
Tell me what you think. But you're also, like.
I thought he looked like Luke. He looked like the big Luke beard in Last Jedi. But I'm going to reverse time and say retroactively I meant Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, you see what happens at the end of the show is that magic makes him big and he transports to Earth. And it turns out this is a prequel series for Harry and the Hendersons.
For the Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah.
Oh boy, this is getting to be a complicated IP at this point.
Absolutely.
So... there's a really nice scene where Graydon comes back, and I tend not to like scenes where people say what's going on so much, but I think Graydon put it together so well where he says, look, this person is mad at you because of this, and this person is sticking around because they want to see what you can do. And what he's getting at is that everybody here is focused on you because you are special, whether you know it or not. Mm-hmm. And it's a really sort of like, it's a very sweet thing that he approaches her with. It clearly takes her very much off guard. But you also get much more of a sense of Graydon's sort of emotional intelligence, that he looked like he was sort of awkward before that. Yeah, and I kind of wonder, are they trying to set up some kind of love triangle eventually too? That was kind of something I took away from his conversation with Allura. especially as Kit and Jade's relationship, like there's a whole lot of tension all of a sudden because of everything going on, and the two of them are sort of butting heads in ways that they haven't. And that's the Jade and Kit is the sort of the romance that I think is probably going to get developed the most.
Yeah.
But I think that also makes a lot of sense. And I just love sort of how naturally it feels, and it's not, their romance isn't like a subject of discussion for everybody to have an opinion about. It's just a natural thing. We can just have a queer romance that doesn't require discussing it or placing it within the world. It just is. So I like seeing that develop naturally like that. Yeah,
and you said something with the first episode about that kind of got me thinking. How Graydon's father seems a little fishy, maybe. Like,
yeah, we'll save that for predictions. I have a very specific reason.
Okay, well, we'll save it for predictions because I'm developing a prediction based on what you said and this conversation partly. So yeah, we're almost to predictions, aren't we?
I think we're almost to the end. Willow has that tragic vision, which is very tragic because it's the sense of responsibility with no hope for him. Like he has to do this thing that he knows is going to end badly. It's not an unusual setup, but it is instantly sort of weighty and tragic. So we get this scene of her waking up the next morning after being in the woods trying to do this seed charm to make the berries grow all night. And I think my expectation was she'd wake up and she had done it. But it's still not done. And she just goes mad and she starts pounding at the ground and yelling. And she says the magic words one more time. And then a fist comes out of the air and punches her. And it's Ballantyne who shows up and he abducts her. And then we pan down and we see that last time was the time that did it. And it didn't strike me until the second time I watched it, is that it's her rage that's different. The only thing that's different in all of her times trying it is she tries magic in anger, and that's the time it works.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's the intentional
power of the dark side
beat there. Yeah, but it's I don't necessarily know that anger and righteous fury necessarily needs to be dark side.
Right.
I think you could make an argument otherwise, but that's the one time it works. We also get another bit of modern music. Did this one work playing for you?
Yeah, it's fine. It's a choice. It's not the choice I would have made.
So I'm a little conflicted about this one because I love this song. It's a cover of a Donovan song. And I actually think it's tonally nice and it fits here. I do have a slight problem with any Donovan cover that reduces the overall sinisterness of Donovan music, because his music always has this sort of creepy undertone. And I think some of their more major key harmonies felt a little less sinister than the Donovan original. I deeply personally care about this because I once saw a really good band do an otherwise terrible cover of Season of the Witch in a major key, which haunts me to this day. You could possibly try that.
I mean, there's something to be said for taking a song and making it your own, and even, changing the meaning in some ways.
Yeah, and it's a really good cover. I won't lie, I've listened to it again a couple times. But yeah, I'm suspicious still of modern music whenever it shows up.
Yeah. Can we? I want to go back to something we talked about a little bit. We didn't really delve into it. The fallout scene between Sorsha and Willow.
Yeah.
What did you think of it overall? Just
I was really struck by how sad Willow's past couple of decades has been for him, and how much they let that be the sort of focus of it, like his. The feelings that he had in the first movie of feeling, insecure or not confident, he seemingly conquers those. And yet after the movie, after he's saved the dang world, here's the world still undermining his confidence. And it's like he cannot catch that break that he deserves, which feels both honest and really sad. So I really liked it, if maybe not liked it is the right way of putting it.
Yeah, well, this scene particularly is my least favorite scene in the whole things so far, just because I feel like it didn't feel earned to me. Like there wasn't enough backstory of what's been going on between the two of them. They kind of set it up in the previous thing, which also didn't work that well for me. So, I have a reasonable amount of faith. Maybe they'll do more flashbacks and stuff, and it'll come together and make more sense later on. But it just felt like it needed to happen as a plot device for me, more so than it was a good dramatic point.
I can see that.
That's my biggest hang up in the entire show so far, is that particular scene.
I think for me, if I'm on board with the idea of a scene and I can understand a way to get there, I will instantly start doing like apology in my head of like, oh, clearly this scene has happened that I haven't seen. So I will sort of carry water for a story if I like it enough. And right now I like this enough that worked for me, but I can absolutely see it feeling out of place or unearned.
Yeah. Okay, are we to the point where we give our rating?
Yeah, I believe when she gets punched in the jaw, that is the end of the episode.
Yes.
Would you like to start?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I think you went first last time, right? So, the last one was a strong good. Again, our scale is uff, good, or so uff and good. This one I'm going to give a light good because
trending up
a lot of it's because of the stuff between Saoirse and Willow, and I just didn't totally buy it. And I'm going to reserve the right to retroactively go off if it doesn't pay off better later on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we'll also do a collective season judgment at the end. But I think for me, I would a qualified good. I think the first time I watched it, I was sort of taken aback by some of the Willow characterizations. But it only took me a short while to sort of digest those and realize that I like the Luke Skywalker of Last Jedi characterization. I think there's a lot of really interesting meat and gristle that they can play with here. So it wasn't maybe necessarily the episode I expected after the first episode, but I'll give it a good. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of felt that coming from you. I think you liked it a little bit more than me this second episode. I like the first episode a lot more, but I'm also still optimistic that things will, I think, at least be at the first episode's level for most of the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think Warwick Davis's humor for me is probably the thing that boosts it up a little bit. His delivery on things is just so sharp.
Yeah, and the High Aldwin scene was probably my favorite part. I didn't get the chills in this episode like I did a couple times in the first one, but it was fun to be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened, but in a different kind of way. One thing that did happen in this episode that I thought was actually a pretty good artistic thing that Screen Crush pointed out is so the Nelwyns are they create like this kind of like a tiara for her at one point.
Yeah.
And then she's to a point where she doesn't want this responsibility. She puts it in the water and lets it go away. And that's like kind of an exact opposite of what happened, where she was coming in on the river to them, right? And this is like her not only casting away the responsibility, but also like who she is and the importance of her. And I think that's actually pretty artistic and very underplayed, because I definitely needed that pointed out to me.
I am embarrassed that I'm embarrassed that I didn't try to attach any symbolism at all to that, which now seems extremely obvious and straightforward. Yeah.
I think that's very deliberate. You want to just talk about some general, I guess, observations of I guess just this and the previous episode too.
I think one of the things that I think I'm accepting now is that this is a Daikini focused story about, these young kids, and that Willow is the sequel trilogy Luke Skywalker sort of figure for it. And I think I think that's fine and great. I would have loved to see a Nelwyn-focused Willow show, but I think this is a pretty savvy way of making it appeal to both old Willow nerds like us and, kids who aren't necessarily being served by a specific, fantasy. There's really dark, gritty fantasy, and then there's, sort of, animated, youthful fantasy, and I think this is a nice sort of middle ground between that.
Yeah, I'm curious to know more about this withered crone, who apparently is at least being presented as our main antagonist. They could pull the wool from under or whatever. It seems like Willow is very familiar with this withered crone, even though
he seems to know a lot, whereas no one else has heard of this phrase or name at all. Which is a little suspect. Yeah.
And, I think just early on, you got to think it's Babmorda in some way. I think that's kind of the hint, and maybe it's too obvious. Maybe it's something else.
Well, I would like to go back to the point that Raziel and Shalindria are gone, but not necessarily dead. We don't know where those characters are. So if we're talking about identity puzzles, those seem to be pieces in play. Oh,
I did write down the quote. The quote is, Raziel is gone, Shalindria too. So they're gone. They're quote unquote
that's not dead.
Gone. Just a fun... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
One real quick thing is that for a brief moment in this episode, we get a shot of the sky, and there are 2 moons.
Yes, I noticed that.
So I think we could safely say that using a moon as a month is probably a Earth-centric foolishness that we should not indulge in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. This is a pretty fun thing, just based on some of the stuff we talked about. The Young Guns 2 reference, which seems pretty obvious. That was an 89 movie, as I recall. There's a Princess Bride quote at one point.
Yes, my wife caught this, and I did not, and I'm embarrassed again. But it leapt right out at her. It's absolutely a Princess Bride reference.
Willow says it. I forget what it is. I wish I had written it down.
So what happens is they're talking about Mad Mardigan, and him being missing and not coming back. And Willow says, death wouldn't stop Mads from coming back, only delay him a bit.
Yes, that's it.
And I believe, from the Princess Bride, it's death can't stop true love, only delay it.
Exactly. So Princess Bride, you have a 1987 movie right there. At one point, as an expletive of sorts, Willow says, "Oh, nards."
I did catch
Similar
that.
to kick him in the nards. From Wolfman the 1987 wonderful film, The Monster Squad.
Absolutely.
So
Chris, I think I'm unsurprised to find how many movies we have in common in our early DNA. But yeah,
I feel like they're going for all the late 80s references they can squeeze into this show. There could be other things we haven't caught. It's something that everyone should look out for, I think.
And I'm deeply suspicious and allergic to unnecessary fan service and that sort of stuff. And none of them have bothered me so far. They've been subtle and in keeping with the show enough that they work great.
Yeah. And Nards is one that just sticks out to me. I haven't heard it in any other context.
Not since Monster Squad.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so should we do some predictions? Where we think things are going? I think you said you've got a couple. I've got a few. Maybe I'll go, you go, and
yeah. Why don't you go ahead and start? Because I think you've got more at me at this point.
Okay. So we learn early on that Graydon, he's introduced as having a brother who fell out of a tree, and presumably died. I think that's. Did they actually outright say that? Anyway, I think he's going to come into play in some way.
Like Shalindria and Raziel, they don't say that he died. They say there used to be 2 of them. One of them fell out of a tree, so now I'm marrying this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity here just in the show in general, in terms of like the fates of people, and even stuff like not seeing Eric get actually abducted, like we talked about in the last show. So yeah, that's a little minor prediction here that Graydon's brother will factor into things in some way.
Okay. I'll tell you why I don't trust Graydon's dad.
Okay.
King Hastur. And that name, Hastur, Hastur, is a name that shows up in the sort of Cthulhu mythos.
Oh, really?
As a eldritch god from, outside the world that means us all harm. I think it originally comes from a short story by Ambrose Bierce, and then later gets used in a lot of the sort of Cthulhu mythos cycles. But Hastur is a name I've seen connected with the King in Yellow and Robert Chambers, and generally being up to no good on a cosmic level. So as soon as you introduce a character named King Hastur, I was like, nope, hold on. So I do not trust him.
Okay, so I'm going to, like what I insinuated earlier, based on your lack of trust that you displayed earlier on, I'm thinking maybe Graydon's in on that too. And that's why he's like getting all buddy-buddy with Allura. Like maybe like there isn't, like Galadorn doesn't really want to be like on even ground with Tirzline. Like they want Allura at Galadorn. So
when he's told he has to go on the expedition, there's a bit of silent dialogue that we don't hear where King Hastur tells him something. And we don't know
true. Yeah.
what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add on to that, I think that he will develop strong feelings for Allura and eventually decide not to take that path because he knows it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, that feels probably pretty accurate as well to me. I think it's probably slightly suspicious that he so readily speaks Nakadic, basically the black speech, the evil language.
That's interesting too, yeah.
Yeah, so he has some preparation that makes him uniquely placed to know some things.
I think he was taking notes too. Like, was he taking notes as Allura was trying and failing so often with those spells? And
my other prediction is that maybe he will take to magic more naturally because he has all of this, sort of book learning and smarts about it.
Yeah.
So I have a prediction that he's going to be able to use magic as well.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Here's another one for you. Silas will die heroically.
Aww.
He'll hand over his wooden animal to Borman and say, "Get this to my boy. Its name is Borman."
Oh, I don't like it, but you're right. That's the sort of thing that now that you've said it out loud, it seems so clearly set up. Oh, bummer.
I know. I hate to be the bearer of bad news in these predictions, and sorry for the spoilers in advance, everybody, because there's no way I'm wrong about this.
So I think one of my predictions, I do think that as much as it feels like Bavmorda will be associated with the Withered Crone, I think the Withered Crone is going to be Rizal or Shalindria, having gone dark or having a different perspective or a different motive that we don't see yet. Okay.
Yeah, I saw somebody positing that on Reddit. I think someone thought it would be Rizal. That's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. She is gone. Maybe she's gone. And that would be an interesting showdown between Willow and Rizal. Like she was his Obi-Wan, basically, to his Luke Skywalker.
There's a lot of dramatic potential there.
Yeah. I still think Bavmorda is going to play some role, though. Whether or not that's her, like, her spirit is in the netherworld, I believe, it were to insinuate from the ending of the film.
Yeah, it was banished beyond.
Yes, and what is the netherworld? That's not defined. Maybe she has friends there.
We've got a lot of unsaid lore at this point to build up on.
Exactly. Actually, one thing I wrote down, I forgot this until I'm reading it right now, is that Graydon's language skills will prove huge at some point. And I had a different thought in mind from what we just discussed. I just thought, like, in general, like he seems worthless, basically, right, for the most part. But it could be the moment,
the knowledge class,
the moment when they're entering the mines of Moria and Fellowship of the Ring, and Gandalf is figuring out speak friend and enter, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I predicted when I wrote this, but I kind of like what I just said a few minutes ago better now.
I think that I like that first one better too. I also, sorry. Oh, dang. Sorry, I swallowed my tongue for a moment. And I forgot what I was going to say. So let's go a clean break. Do you have any more predictions?
Just one more. Do you?
No, I think I'm gonna
Okay.
stop predicting at this point. I find it's best when I let things smash at me. Yeah.
Okay, so...
actually,
go
let
ahead.
me back up real quick. So one prediction that I do have, I think we sort of briefly discussed it, was that, Alora's having all this trouble with magic, but we've heard so often how incredible her cooking is. So I'm wondering if she's basically supplanted all this magic and, allowed it to grow weak during all this time, is the way that it's coming out in this sort of like almost supernatural cooking that allows her to create these incredible muffins and possum stews.
Right. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit on the last episode, but yeah, I do think there's definitely something to the cooking aspect of it all, and that'll come into play. And of course we know that Mad Mardigan's absence is a huge part of the show. It's been widely reported that Val Kilmer will not be in the show, obviously for health reasons and COVID reasons and stuff like that. I think that we will physically see Mad Mardigan in some way, though, at some point. And I've got a couple. Oh, go. You could.
I've heard conflicting things actually about
Okay.
his, and I've heard that we wanted to get him involved, but COVID kept him from being involved.
Yes.
But I think ultimately he is involved in some way. And I think they've been very cagey about the specificity, but I think they've confirmed that in some measure or manner, he will be involved by the end of the show.
Yeah. So these are just a couple of off the wall ways that possibly this kind of stuff could happen. Maybe the character Allagash, played by Christian Slater, is actually him in some way, like transformed through magic, or they're a similar age. They're, as we discussed once before, similar heartthrob status.
Yeah.
So I think that's unlikely, but I'm not going to throw it out as an impossibility.
Yeah, I mean, shape changing and identity puzzles are already on the table, so sure.
And then I think something far more likely is like maybe it's even a post-credits thing at the end of the show, or maybe it's actually in the show near the end of it, but it is Val Kilmer, and they did just one scene with him in Van Nuys or wherever, and we see actual Mad Mardigan like in whatever awful state he's in. He doesn't have to talk or anything, but he's there, and we know that he's alive, but not in the greatest shape. Or maybe the magic of the Curus, the Chimerian Curus has affected him in some way as well. I don't think they'd go as far as like taking his speech from him, because that's too real. I at the end of the day, I think Mad Mardigan is gonna.
I think that's
be
probably
in the show physically in some way.
I hope so as well. Yeah. One hope that I really do have is that I would really like them to complete the story in this season and not leave things open. I would love to see more in the Willow universe, but I think focusing on like a nice complete story, I hope that they've got a sort of a full arc in mind. Hang on a second, I'm getting a text. Remember I told you we might have a special guest today, and no, not this time.
Who would it have been?
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's make sure we can get him on first before we say. But next time.
Okay, that's very cryptic, Cameron.
Yeah, well, yeah,
All right. On that note, that has been our probably what will wind up being the longest single episode of this podcast.
I guarantee it.
Yeah, it seems very, very likely. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a lot to say about the finale or whatever. But
thank you for sticking with us this far. Those of you who aren't our direct relatives, direct relatives, you are contractually obligated to stay till the end.
Oh, I doubt many of mine, if any of mine, have made it this far. Maybe my sister has. Hey, Britt, how's it going?
One real quick thing I wanted to say is if folks want to go and leave reviews, I understand that that's the best way podcasts are found. I only know that because other podcasts tell me that that's how podcasts are found, but I'm a podcaster now, so apparently I believe that. So if you want to go and give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, if you want to leave a shout out in the review, we will happily read it on the air as long as it is appropriate and not too cruel. We probably wouldn't read it if it was too cruel.
If it's funny and cruel, I'm going to read it.
Yeah, there we go.
We're not here to make friends.
I don't know about you, Chris. I was definitely here to make friends.
Okay, maybe a little bit. No. Seriously though, we do this because we want to have fun talking to each other about something we both deeply love, and hopefully that's why you've made it this far, and hopefully you agree, and we welcome those reviews.
And thank you.
Better be 5 stars though. I mean, come on,
Mom.
All right, everyone. Thank you once again, and we will see you next week after episode 30.